We are here to both learn and to teach. You get that, right? You don't just fit into one format. Sometimes you are the teacher, sometimes you are the student, sometimes I am the teacher and I am the student. And the beauty of that is that when we become comfortable with that, then we're able to vacillate as need be in any given situation without resistance. And we are both here to learn and to teach one thing, and that is non-duality. So stop and think about that for a moment. The only reason that you are here is to both learn and to teach the idea of non-duality. And what that means is that there are no two powers in the universe. There is only one. There is no opposing force outside of you. There is only one power in the universe. And what is so beautiful about that power is that we have an opportunity through something called spiritual law to be able to harness that power, to use that power, to implement it in such a way that it can literally transform the entire landscape and the quality of our life. That's our only reason for being here. Our only reason for being here is to teach non-duality and to understand that. So here's what I've demised, that if we are feeling anxious about anything whatsoever, then we have stepped out of the realm of our classroom and our teaching mode, and we have forgotten the principal idea of non-duality. Anxious over anything. Because anxiousness, whatever that is derived from, wherever it has its genesis from, is a false idea. Because if we speak truth and are students of truth and study truth and live our life dedicated to truth students, then you understand that according to law, there is nothing to be anxious about. And so there is this process where we remember that and we abide by that and we work with that, and then there are those moments where we forget that. And we get into this realm of anxiousness. But what you get to understand is the more that you practice and work with law, the more those periods of anxiousness lessen. And so really, if you and I have a problem, then the only thing that it is separation anxiety. And there's where that term comes from, by means of me. Separation anxiety. Anxiety over what? Separation. Separation being what? A fallacy. Because the only thing that's happening, the only thing that is real is this one power. So you and I are put on this earth in this human form to dedicate ourselves to that in the best way possible. To open up ourselves, to go on an exploration of life whereby we can go through any particular situation whatsoever and remember that truth. And so this thing called law then is the creative medium by which that happens. Law is known by many things. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said that law is the creative medium by which all of creation is made from. And so when you start to think about that, everything, all that is, came through a creative medium known as law. And law simply is, it is done unto you as you believe. As a man thinketh. Whatever you sow, you reap. That is law. That's the spiritual law by which all of life has its founding. So I get a call on Tuesday. And I'm in my car. I'm going from one appointment to another, and it's from the hours of 2 to 3, Tuesday afternoon. And it's the ABC affiliate with Diane Sawyer. And they're wanting to interview me in regards to the Georgia law, the gun law that's just been passed in Georgia. And so if you're not aware of this law, it means that now you can pack heat and come to church. Now supposedly in the state of Georgia, you can go to bars, you can go to public events, you can go anywhere in the world and take a gun with you. And of course, we as a church or an institution have the right then to create signage that asks you not to, but by law we can't deny you entrance. So any of you want to polish your Smith & Wesson next week, bring it on. So they wanted to know what I thought about that. And immediately the reporter crew on the phone said, by the way, what do you think about that? And I was like taken off guard. I think I was eating something too. And I just went, well, and I explained a little bit, and he goes, perfect. He goes, okay, you'll hear from us in half an hour. And he knew the location. So I was racing back to get here so I could brush my teeth and comb my hair and get all ready. And 30 minutes went by, and nobody called. And so I redialed the number that was in my cell phone, and I got the reporter crew, ground crew, and they said, well, we checked back with headquarters with ABC, and they really want this story to focus on those who are pro-gun. And but thank you so much. So I would like to give you my response. So you are Diane Sawyer, and you're asking me, David, nice jacket. What do you think? What do you think about the gun laws in the state of Georgia? And here's my answer. You and I understand that there are human laws, right? Human laws are that we abide by traffic signals, we pay our taxes, we do all of the things that conform to legislation that we are moderated to abide by. That's just the way in which you and I do this thing called life as a human being. But what we know about human law is that it's very restrictive. You know, these laws are born from the minds of men. And these laws are usually birthed and rooted in something that is fear-based. They are preventative by nature, correct? Yes. All the laws that we abide by really are preventative in nature. They're trying to prevent something, to avoid something. And what we understand about that is that if you're trying to prevent something or avoid something, and so you're fixated on that, that very thing then expands. So human law, by definition, you know, it's got some work to do. But spiritual law is not finite. Spiritual law is infinite. It is boundless. It's based upon the one principle that everything is connected. It is, what did I say? We both learn and teach non-duality. So the beautiful thing about spiritual law is that even when you are in the midst of human law, you do not have to negate your spiritual law. What does that mean? Even in the midst of something that seems to be oppressive or finite or rooted in fear, does not mean that you have to take that on. Because you are governed by a greater law. You have devoted your life, you are a student of truth, which is rooted in spiritual law, which teaches us that everything comes to us in right and perfect time according to our consciousness, our awareness, our thoughts. Right? So isn't it beautiful that even if a law like this, that feels absurd to many people, even in that, you and I do not have to succumb to the wave of emotion and drama and fear that might accompany this particular law, because you know better. Had Diane Sawyer heard that, she would be a platinum pledger at SLCA. And I'm sure there will be another time. So what is this law? It is the creative medium. The creative medium, again, as our founder Ernest Holmes says, by which all things come to be. Now, you're sitting there right now and you're going, I love that. I love that spiritual law is the creative medium by which all things come to be. But when something comes to be in our lives that we don't like, we want to blame it on some human law, or some human person, or some human circumstance. And we forget that whatever is sitting on the plate of our experience has made its way to us by the general atmosphere of our own consciousness. It's not that you and I wake up one morning and you say, today I choose to have an automobile accident. That's not the way that law works. But if you have a generalized atmosphere that life just sucks, that nothing ever seems to work out for you, that you're underappreciated, that you're not seen, then there is a multitude of ways by which that law will bring you opportunities to say, you know what, you are right. That's law. And so, what we get to do in the moments of those accidents and those events and those diagnoses and those abandonments and all of that pain and all of that sorrow and all of that separation anxiety is to remember that everything that has arrived on the plate of our being is something that we have served up. And there is such a power in that when you can understand that and own it. Because you are no longer a slave to anything outside of yourself. You have reclaimed your power, and you have understood that at any given moment, you have the ability now. You have the ability now to freely design what it is that you want simply by the renewal, as Reverend Scotchy said, the renewal of your mind. And so we call this law perfection. And it's very hard for us sometimes to identify ourselves with perfection because, of course, we're our worst critics, right? It's very hard for us in this human experience to stand before a mirror and say, oh my God, you're so perfect. But do you realize that there is a part of you that is? The spiritual part of you is. And so our work then in this lifetime, on this journey, is to be more with that than the other. To be more in alignment with that perfection. And to understand that the law then is constantly with us. So here's something that's very helpful. If you grew up in a traditional religious background and you read Scripture, you know, of course, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Do you know that the original Aramaic word of Lord is really law? So when you substitute the word law for Lord, you get the law is my shepherd, I shall not want. And you start to realize that by the right usage of law, you shall never want, because it is your shepherd, it is your guidepost, it is your steering, it is the thing that will lead you to exactly what it is that is your heart's desire. The law is my shepherd, I shall not want. And you start to realize the depth and the beauty and the infinite potentiality of what you possess. Of what you possess. And so perfection. How do we get to this place where we realize that even in the apparent absence of that which is perfection, that it's there? I can't remember which class it was, but last month I got the image of, any of you ever been to New York City and gone to Macy's? And they have those big revolving doors, you know? So you walk through the revolving door. To me, perfection is like that revolving door. Law is like that revolving door. Your truth is like that revolving door, because on the first part of the door that's opened up into the store, let's say that that's our present situation. That's the thing that might feel overwhelming, that might feel anxious, that might have a diagnosis, that might have abandonment, that might have lack, that might have fear, anger. That's part of the revolving door that's showing itself, right? But guess what? In the entirety of that door is another part back here. And to me, that's the perfection part. It's still a part of the collective whole. Here's the human, here's the spiritual. Here's the human. Oh, this is a good workout. Human, spiritual, right? And so what we forget sometimes is that when the human part is exposed, we think that's it. But there's another piece to it, the spiritual part back here. And so what do you and I have an opportunity to do? To push that sucker around. And let the spiritual part of you be the part that's exposed and opened up to the world. And so when someone who is a practitioner prays for you, does spiritual mind treatment for you, they are trained, no, you do not human part. What you call forth is this part, the spiritual part. You call forth that which is the perfection to come and have its predominant energy, placement, awareness in your life. If you cooperate with that, then that must be so, because that's the way that law works. Do you get it? So really what it is a dedication, and then a rededication, and then a rededication, and a rededication to doing that over and over again. So the beauty of the revolving door analogy is not for me to stand up here and to tell you that the human part will not be exposed ever again once you move it around. No. It's that even when it does, and it will, even when it does, you go, oh, I don't have to stay here. And you can push that baby around. And you can just keep pushing it around and keep pushing it around and keep pushing it around and exposing the spiritual part of you which so wants to be in relationship with you. And so as I looked at the topic today, the responsibility of that, the responsibility of healing. Healing is not just in the physical. Healing is in all capacities of your life because you are holistic. Holistic means if you are living a holistic life, it's not just the physical, which is, of course, a huge part of it, but it's also emotional. Are you holistic emotionally? It's spiritually. It's financially. It's in the way in which you relate to all living things. Our goal as students of truth, as in mental science, is to live a holistic life. So the responsibility then of that healing rests in doing the work. And our founder, Ernest Holmes, in the big book, The Science of Mind, this is kind of our Bible right here. You know, he said, remember that there are many people that have come before us that have shown us that this is possible, such as teachers like Jesus. And he said, when Jesus said to the man, stretch forth thine hand, he undoubtedly saw a perfect hand. Jesus didn't go, oh my God, what happened to you? That's gross. Gross being an ancient Sanskrit word. What was offered in that moment was a testament to the fact that even in the appearance of something that seems to be off base or diseased, there is the spiritual part that is only seen. Stretch forth thine hand, he undoubtedly saw a perfect hand. If everything is mental, and that's the part you need to understand, everything that's going on in your life has its origin in your mind. If everything is mental, and if Jesus saw an imperfect hand instead of a perfect one, no good would have resulted according to the law of cause and effect. So healing then is not creating a perfect idea or a perfect body. It is revealing an idea which is already perfect. Ernest Holmes said that. Healing is not creating a perfect idea. Do you get that you and I do not create anything? It's already there. It is the part of the revolving door of your soul that already exists. It wants to be revealed. It wants to be called forth. It wants to be recognized. It's not creating a perfect idea or a perfect body. It is revealing an idea which is already perfect. Get this. Healing is not a process. It is a revelation. Through the thought of the practitioner to the thought of the patient, there may be a process in healing, but not a process of healing. Because healing already exists. Wholeness already exists. The idea of a holistic life is already in essence. So I look at all of you as practitioners. I think of all of you as someone who practices these principles and are called forth every single day to implement and put those things into place. So we must create a mental environment for our life's work to begin. I was thinking about the idea of practice, and I reflected upon what I thought was a phrase attributed to Aristotle. You probably know it. It says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. We are what we repeatedly do. In other words, think about law. Think about the idea of law. We are what we repeatedly do. Then by law, whatever it is that we repeatedly do is a reflection of our mental state. And so excellence then, it's not an act, it's a habit. And so often that quote is attributed to Aristotle, but it wasn't. The quote is actually from Will Durant's The Story of Philosophy, which was published in 1926. And it's Durant's distillation of Aristotle's thoughts. What it means is simply this: we are that which we do. Our actions define who we are. If we want to be excellent at something, then we must do that thing repeatedly until we excel at it. He says, for example, if you wanted to be a really great basketball player, but all you did was you sat and you watched other people play basketball, and you yourself never picked up a ball, you would wind up becoming an excellent basketball watcher, but not an excellent basketball player, nor a player of any kind. Thank you very much. So if we repeatedly practiced non-dualism, if we repeatedly practiced the idea that there is only one power, you got to get the one power then is in you. It's not separate from you, it is in you. If we repeatedly practice this, the refusal to see anything as separate from the understanding of our Creator, if we repeatedly practiced truth, you and I then would not only be a truth student, we would be a teacher of truth. We would be a vessel of truth. I don't know about you, but sometimes in my life I have been privileged to be in the presence of someone who is a truth teacher and a truth student. They know it, and they don't even have to open their mouth. They just walk into a room. And the vibration of that is amazing and healing and beautiful. And so in order for us to implement this and put this into practice, our responsibility comes in that very word, practice. And it separates those of us who play basketball and those who are basketball player watchers. What I really want to drive home to you is that you have an option. You have an option. I think as I grow older, and the longer that I've been doing this, I actually become less tolerant of the people who insist upon being the watchers. Not when they just own that, but when they make the players wrong. That just works my last nerve. Right? I'm sure it does you, right? I call them sideline critics. When we become so critical about what somebody else is doing, then what we do is we're practicing dualism. And we are pointing blame and we are pointing judgment. And we have lost our identity, and that revolving door has turned back to the human finite component, which is what human law is based on. And I think that there are three things that would help us in practicing. One is your interest in life has to increase. Here's what I believe. When your interest in life increases, then life becomes more interesting. And what do I mean by that? It's very easy. It's very easy for you. You know, you can sit and crochet and watch the Golden Girls, and that's your life. And if that works for you, great. If you have no interest outside of that, that's fine. But don't blame other people who are out trying new things. And so when your interests increase, the law then has more to work with. I was asked last night to go to someone's Narcotics Anonymous meeting because they were getting their 22-year chip. And I said, okay, because this person has been taking class with me for years now and never missed a class. It's been amazing. I went and looked at their records and I thought, wow, they have never missed a class. And I went and I discovered that this person was monitoring, leading this meeting. And so I was a little bit early, so I stood against the wall, and as I listened to the various people speaking in the meeting, I heard a lot of language indicative of AA. I hear a lot of language from people indicative of Landmark. I hear a lot of language indicative of energy medicine people. I hear a lot of lawyer language. I hear all these different languages. And sometimes what's fascinating about the languages is you can peg the person right away. I hear a lot of language around science of mind. And it can peg the person right away. My interest, I want to have a language that no one can discern. Because I want it to be beyond just jargon. So I'm listening, I'm standing by the wall and I'm listening, and these people are saying their thing, and then this person, the person I was going to give the chip to, got up, and as they began to talk, their language was different. They weren't just reciting quotes and jargon. What they were saying was so infinite in nature, and my heart was just like, yeah. Because they were not defining themselves by their limitations or their story. They were starting to talk about the spiritual component of who they were and the infinite nature of that. And as I sat there and I listened to them speak, I thought, there's not 12 steps. There's a 13 and a 14 and a 15 and a 16 and a 17 and an 18. There are steps that just continue to take us and take us and take us further and further and further into the infinitude of what it is that we are possible. And so what I knew in that moment is that this person's interest had enlarged so much that it literally changed the language of them. And as your interest in life expands, then the other gift that we get to do and what we get to introduce is attention. Attention to the interest. You get it? Because if there is a burning desire, a new interest, a passion in your heart, it's only going to sit there unless you give it attention. And when you give it attention, when you acknowledge it, when you go, I recognize you, I honor you, yes, I will do whatever it is. I don't need to know the how. I'll just put one foot in front of the other and I will show up. Then the law gets activated. The responsibility of using the law is that your interest has to increase, your attention has to go to that increase, and then the final part of that is you have to expect it. There has to be an attention and an expectancy to your interest. An expectancy isn't entitlement. An expectancy is not a bad word. To expect and to know that the things are going to work out is you literally letting the law do its work without interfering. And so when we know that we know that we know that we know, then what has happened is you have moved from a person who simply sits in hope. You've actually moved beyond being a person that simply states a belief. And what you have done is you have become a person who knows. And that's the migration that each and every one of us are put on this planet to do. To know that we know. And so none of this has any relevance unless it has meaning for you. Why do all of this work if it has no meaning for you? Why even show up if you don't care? And so, as long as you have meaning, it's very Italian. As long as you have meaning, right? Then you have a foundation. It was Nietzsche who said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Why are you here? I'll tell you my opinion. And it's that you are supposed to take this knowledge of the law and run with it. And I want you to know that that's what this community is based on. Teaching you the law. You have an opportunity to come to class with me tomorrow. You have an opportunity to take class online. And for the rest of this year, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to teach. And I'm going to teach, and I'm going to teach, and I'm going to teach to whoever shows up so that your language changes. Your perceptions change. And you are not run by human law, but by spiritual law. So if you will know with me, as you take that deep cleansing breath, I'm going to ask you to pay attention right now. Pay attention to the words. Pay attention to your feeling. Pay attention to your feeling of the words so that you can get some kind of reading on where you are in the allowing of these truths. So I speak these words now knowing that the only thing that is real within each and every one of us is the spiritual component. What I know that is the true you, the true me, is that which is whole. What I also know is that anything else unlike this wholeness is simply an opportunity for us to spin the door. And so we stop for a moment and we ask, do we even want to? And if we do, and if we say yes, then every energy conceivable rushes in to support us in that act. And so I will just say yes for us collectively. And I will know that as we do, that in this moment, things are really shifting. And that in our understanding of law, that the moment that there is just willingness, and that's all it needs to be, willingness. Then as we go about our lives this week and we're paying attention, then we will start to see levels of support, people, synchronistic events, things unfolding for us in ways that we have yet to even imagine. Because that's the way that life is when we live it consciously. And so this is my prayer, this is my knowing. I speak it with so much authority as I let these words now travel into this beautiful thing called law. And the law receives it like a willing servant. And it says yes. And it always says yes. And so we reset ourselves, we course correct into a history of our own design, a history of our own making. And lastly, we accept nothing less than this. And if you are willing to own that, then I ask you to breathe that in through your body. And say with me, and so it is.